Happy Friday, folks.
Oh, crazy Friday morning, man.
Always.
It's great. Great
Lisa
to be
Richer,
here.
welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I'm very excited about neurodivergence today because Tom and I just tend to be extremely.
I feel like we attract this crowd. It must say something about us or something.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. But Lisa, I'm psyched you're here, and I can't wait to talk to you.
I'm excited to be here. I know we were talking before, right? We're three ADHDers, and so this could go any direction, and I'm super open to wherever this conversation flows.
Well, with any luck, we'll actually touch on neurodivergence at some point amidst the myriad of other divergences that are probably going to happen. So hopefully we'll get some time on this topic. But
there may be some railroad tracks, but we don't know if we have a train going in any direction whatsoever.
Yeah, so Lisa, let's just dive in, man.
We all are like people.
Yeah. Lisa, let's dive in here. So when you and I talked, and one of the things that originally really kind of sparked me wanting to talk to you and get on here, aside from the fact we should take this moment to do a quick shout out to Perry and everyone over at the Octopus Movement, which is where we originally met each other. And Tom and I talked about Perry's been on the show.
Perry's been on the show. Yeah.
We've talked about Octopus quite a bit. So, I just definitely want to give them a nod, but it's interesting because you and I talked, and you have this, I don't know how to phrase it, but I think you phrase it as a success partner for neurodivergence, right? And so I feel like you're almost like a Rosetta Stone for like, how do you neurodivergent folks like exist in the, I don't want to say regular person world, because I do honestly believe, and we can get into this today too,
normies.
I think everyone's neurodivergent these days. So I feel like what we used to call neurodivergent may almost be time for a refresh on what is in that bucket, because I think everybody now, and I'll get off my social media soapbox quickly today. Listen, with as much as it's pervasive in our world, like I think everybody's fucking ADHD these days. I don't think there's a touch
of it.
Yeah.
Aspects, if you will.
I'm going to say no.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, no. Go. Okay. Let's. Yeah,
just the people I know.
Just okay. Everyone I know. That's weird.
So I will say that. Does everyone have a tendency to do something that could fall under that? Yes, because in part, all of the technology, I believe none of us were born to be multitaskers. However, technology is multitasking. And so what I learned through the years, you're talking about me being a neurodivergent success partner, what I learned through the years is systems weren't built for someone with my brain. And whether it was when I was an elite level athlete, as a professional in the corporate world, as a parent, like the systems in society are built for my way of thinking. Now, let me back up for a minute and say the neurodiversity umbrella does include neurodivergent and neurotypical. And what is deemed neurotypical? It's what society deems typical. So I will say, Matt, that as you were talking, we may need to redefine what society deems as typical because there are many different types of people. But that's like that, we're not going to reinvent everything here, but where I come in is like thinking about these. You talked about me as a Rosetta Stone for ND folks. Never heard that before. I actually love that. That actually didn't sink me.
You can use that. You can use that. That could be your, LinkedIn
It's almost
tagline.
Like I've been in marketing for a minute. Yeah, it's like.
Thank you. Yeah. So and so I think about this as there are tendencies, but we're not all a little ADHD. We're not all a little autistic. And for me, that drives me bonkers. What also drives me bonkers is that anybody that gets a certification to be a neurodivergent something is now a neurodivergent something. But for where I believe that intersectionality and the role that I play in this world is I was misunderstood growing up as a child, undiagnosed neurodivergent. I got diagnosed in my late 40s. I found out as an adult that I had visual processing disorder, which is the depth perception. So if you guys had backgrounds on, I think I had even asked you not to turn it off when we met. And that's kind of was part of our conversation too in that session, or somebody that was in the group with us, because my depth perception is really wonky. So when I've been doing virtual work for years, but I never got headaches until all the Zoom backgrounds came into play and the Google backgrounds.
Wow.
And
that's
so
wild. I've never heard that before. I didn't even know that was a
processing-
possibility.
Oh gosh, yeah. And actually, if you listen to a LinkedIn Live that I was on with Lemonade, one of the gentlemen that was on it, Paul, he was like talks about belonging, but he had just been in a conversation around how much more brain power, I'm going to butcher this, it takes when you have those backgrounds, because you have to think, like, for me, if there's a background on, this is all I see.
Yeah,
And
you know what?
even if it's just the shadow.
Those backgrounds,
even the blur, huh?
Even the blur.
I think it's for me. And again, I'm not claiming to be classified in this bucket, but I am saying that just there's a portion of my psyche that absolutely fucking hates those backgrounds and I think the blur one is probably the worst of all of them, because it doesn't really blur the whole background, especially like we're wearing, Tom and I are wearing headphones,
it'll like have a halo around your head. Yeah.
Between here and like a little bit where this cord doesn't quite know what to do and stuff like that. It doesn't blur that out. And like that drives me fucking nuts. You know?
Okay, so think about that driving you crazy. Think about me when you put on, I'm in sunny wherever,
right.
And then all of a sudden someone's hand going like this, in and out of the, on top of it. So, and I will get an instant headache, and it strains my eyes, and it took forever. So I have that neurodivergence on top of it, and I get looks sometimes. Even I'm working with school teams, and I say, can you please remove your background? I'm getting headaches. And this is with the special education population, because I work with parents, I work with individuals and organizations. And so really it's like with self, with family, and then community, education, and athletics. And I can go into that a little bit more later, but I work in all these facets in part because I have lived experience and professional experience in all of those facets. But my business was built upon having my first child born neurodivergent, then my second child born neurodivergent. And so for almost 20 years, I've been navigating this as a parent. That's only parenting I've known. But then as I've learned more about myself, I was a neurodivergent athlete. I competed internationally for the US in the 80s in gymnastics. And then I'm a neurodivergent professional. And so I have not only certifications, but I have this lived experience in these different domains. And I was made to feel less than. I was looked at like, or you're too emotional, you're too this. Why do you need to do the middle of a deck when all I'm asking for is the objective and the title? But the way my brain works is I couldn't come up with the title and the objective. I could come up with all the content, but I need someone else to give me the title and the objective. And I see your eyes, Matt, but the easy thing for others is the hardest thing for me. And so as I learned about some of these things, I had pushback from so many people. You have to pick a lane. You have to do this, because for others without that clarity, no one knew how to use me. So I could say that I helped to transform people from stuck to success for students, athletes, and individuals. And someone will go, well, how do you do it for all those people? So I don't talk about it in that broad context with a lot of people, because they need to see this one narrow path, but really my path isn't narrow. And my journey is super interweaving, complex, nonlinear, right? Shout out to Perry too. And so, you know, I see things in ways that others don't. And I'll give like a really current example. And this will be I guess a shout out for Perry and Karen Ziegler and Scott Bodie, who are all part of the Human Score. Right. So I was in a session with them yesterday, and Karen was showing the inner workings of the Human Score. I had never seen it. And I saw it. I wrote some notes down. somebody had asked, well, how is this different than an engagement survey? I'm not going to go into all the details of it, but what I will say is my response to how it was different, Scott was in the call and he's like, thumbs up, high five. And Karen said, wow, Lisa, you got that interpretation based on just seeing this once? And my answer was yes. And it's because the middle and the complexities of things that I see as simple changes and shifts that are human-centered and need to have different viewpoints, different ways of thinking, whether you're considered neurotypical or neurodivergent, that's where the magic happens. That's where the sustainability happens. That's where everything shifts. But the world, for the most part, thinks in blocks and chunks. And I'm all over the place. And so when she brought this together, I'm like, wow, this is brilliant and amazing. And I hope that people really, bring to it. But when you talk about the Rosetta Stone of ND folks, I can thread all these different ways of doing it, whether it's from the professional side, organizations, athletics, individuals, corporations, in the school system. And I bring an approach in a unique perspective that many people in a singular way would push away from me. But now people are leaning into me because there's enough of us looking at the world in a different perspective. And I hate a lot of things that COVID did, but I will say it brought to the surface my people and a lot more virtual type of conversations that are allowing this movement to truly not just be about a single pillar of neurodiversity. It's not just about autism, or it's not just about ADHD. It's about different learners learning how to work together and leaders that think one way, being willing to listen and appreciate even when they don't understand other ways of thinking.
Yeah, and I would sort of build on that and say that like what you're experiencing, I mean, from a business standpoint, I think this has been one of the biggest problems in professional networking going back 25 years, right? Like they always say, you got to niche down, you got to like be specific because humans don't know how to process multifactorial relationships very well, like in my experience, right? And it feels like that's only a neurodivergent attribute to be able to hold those things in presence in your mind at the same time. And so I think that when you're saying people didn't understand how I could help students, athletes, and this, I'm like, well, obviously, because the thing you're helping with, it isn't those individuals. It's the common thread of ND, not something specific to any one of these people. So to me, it makes sense. But I think if anything, that's just a litmus test for like, are you neurodivergent?
That's the yes, no to get you in.
Yeah. I feel like it's sort of like a password at the door almost, because you're like, well, this makes total sense to me, but I can also see how it doesn't make sense to other people. But here, I got a question for you about the neurotypical thing. You said something curious. It was a few minutes ago, so bear with me on remembering this, but you said that neurodiversity involves or winds in neurotypical as well. And I guess I'm curious.
Where's that cross section?
Like, because in my dumb caveman brain, I'm like, neurodivergent implies or outright says divergence, right? Like it says we have diverted off the path of, whereas neurotypical kind of expressly says this is what we are calling normal. So like, can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, hold on one second. Okay. So I actually do one of the webinars I do for organizations is around what you're asking. It's like understanding those intersectionalities and all that. So right in my wheelhouse to talk about that. And so an individual is neurodivergent. A group of individuals are neurodiverse. And the neurodiversity umbrella includes the intersectionality of all individuals. And
including
every individual
neurotypical. Yeah.
Exactly. Every individual is different. So even I did research a couple of years ago for a keynote I was doing for a school system. And one of the things that I was researching came up that no two brains are alike, not even those of identical twins. So like person's fingerprints, no two brains are exactly alike. And that was like, for me, because that just goes to show that everybody has a unique way of thinking. However, if your brain and the way you think and do and act and react doesn't diverge from what is considered normal or typical, you fall into that neurotypical population. So you may have quirks and differences. And here's a really good example. Something that falls under the neurodiversity umbrella is cultural differences. But that doesn't make somebody a neurodivergent individual. It's just their cultural way of doing things will diverge from the norms. So here's an example. In some cultures, this is respectful and this is disrespectful. In some cultures, shouting is a total way. Like I grew up with friends that were off the boat Italian. My in-laws are off the boat from Kiev. And if you're sitting in a room and you're not shouting at the top of your lungs and people aren't screaming over each other, you're not having a good time. If you're quiet and pausing to really listen to the other person, you're wondering if something's wrong. Like what happened here? So, when you're in a different cultural society and you come in and step into that, it's a shock. And so you become the difference. So that doesn't mean that your brain is neurodivergent. It just means that they're diverging from what is their norm.
Just
so
means you're related to Tom.
Look, I'm laughing here because my wife is also ADHD. Both my kids are. And when she first started dating me, we had the typical, it was the one thing we weren't gentrified with, were these loud ass family dinners with like 20 relatives. And she's like, I wanted to cover my ears the entire time I was there. She's like, how do you guys have a conversation? I'm like, we're all talking and we're all paying attention to everything everyone else is saying. We just happen to be doing it at the same time.
Yeah. And at a loud volume.
What everybody is saying. But I can't pay attention to everything everyone's saying at the same time.
Yeah, she can't either.
And I would try to. But, and so some of the other things that I learned over the years was I thought I could multitask, and I will tell you, I suck at it. And
it's
what
biologically
I will say
impossible.
I think most people do, right?
We can go down that rabbit hole.
Most people do. So most people suck at it. So think about someone that is diagnosed ADHD, and even like there's other coexistences with ADHD. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole of all the ways.
Thank you for saying coexistence and not comorbidity.
Yeah, coexist. I don't like. Yeah, coexist.
Thank you.
And then also ADHD and executive functioning. So executive functioning coexists with many things. You'll hear me. I will never use some. And I believe that diagnoses inform. They do not define. So people talk about labels. I talk about information. And I think words matter. And so whether it's in a school system, in an organization, what does that diagnosis or lack thereof, or what do those tendencies tell me about the need of that individual? Matt talking about that pull through. So whether you're coming from whatever industry, whatever perspective, it's that thing. So when I work with clients, I think about I'm helping people, I'm meeting people where they are, and I'm trying to figure out what that unknown is, something that is happening that they can't quite figure out yet. And people tell me that I have an innate ability to listen, share back what I think I heard, and then help the other person go, oh, wow, that's that missing piece. And it helps people bridge the gaps and connect the dots to go from stuck to success. And so there's some of that pull through. And I use my clarity, confidence, and courage journey map to do that, because you have to have the courage to become clear and then become confident in order to be courageous enough to speak these things. The things I talk about now, I got beat down for, gaslit, told I didn't know what I knew, even when I got hired to do a certain job because I would get under people's skin, got let go from companies because I wouldn't agree to do something that I knew wasn't morally correct. And our outside lawyer was even telling me not to do it, but our CEO wanted me to do it because I wouldn't leave my morals. But then I still was going into burnout more and more because I was being suppressed from like being free to be who I am, free to be me, if you will. And so I did end up in burnout. But when I got there, it was the worst and best thing that happened to me, because through the last 6 years of working with therapists and unpacking all the things that led me to that deep burnout, I've learned that I get to do these different funnels, right? Those different multifaceted, difficult things that people don't get. But I've learned how to simplify it and how to express it in a way that no longer comes across as combative to somebody, because I'm clear and confident. I have the courage to say it in a way that people now call me a trailblazer, when people 10 years ago, 15 years ago, were telling me I was crazy to even be thinking this way. And now
so isn't that the always case? Isn't that always the case for those people that are on the edge of something? Right. There's like, I don't want to like the early adopters, right? Like the ones that see the problem and start pointing at it. You know, Matt and I know somebody who is a futurist, which is a funny title to me because he's not right all the time, but it's still like, you know, his claim to fame is like, hey man, I started MTV with a group of people when only 10,000 people in the entire country had cable. You know, and it's like the forethought to go, yeah, we're going to just play music videos. And by the way, kids, anyone under 35, MTV used to play music videos when they started.
Yeah.
The M is for music.
Yeah. So weird.
Not just trash reality TV.
Yeah. But Lisa, let me, so couple things that you said, and I want to unpack them kind of, you pick the order, but like a couple things that I found interesting. One is I also was diagnosed with ADHD in my 40s. In fact, I think I was 40, to be honest. I think it was right around 40. I was immediately thrown down the pharmaceutical track. That lasted about a month. And I was like, fuck no. Like that was, I mean, you know, for better or for worse, I spent 40 years of my life without a diagnosis and somehow managed to make it to 40 just fine. Right. Like, and that was my position on it. I'm not judging people who don't have that, but I'm saying for me, I was like, this intervention is not great. So be curious to hear what that was like finding this out for you in your 40s. The second thing is sort of when I found out, what I found also was super helpful was that it did explain one thing for me quite very succinctly, which was I struggled to get the stuff I knew was right in my head to other people to agree with it, because a lot of the stuff that's in my head is a little fucking crazy, even if it is right. Like, so it might, so that nonlinear path, I'm like, okay, I know you asked me about hot dogs and, you know, but here's the thing. We're going to start one day in California at a water slide park, and we'll give me 5 minutes and we'll get to, you know,
we got to dance around it first.
Yeah, right. But then once you hear the whole story and how it ties together, you're like, oh, that actually informs this hot dog decision that we're about to make. Right. And so what I found super helpful was, and I had a therapist help me figure this out, was, can I repeat back to you what I just heard? Like this concept of saying, like, let me almost get your permission to agree with me, because I'm going to basically tell you what I heard. But at the same time, I'm also going to explain to you what my opinion is through that lens specifically. And I have found that I've been doing for, I'm 50 soon, so not quite there yet, not quite to 10 years, and probably didn't do it right away. So I'm guessing
almost to the 50 club.
Yeah, right. So I'm guessing that I haven't been doing this for 8 years, you know, like, so this is a reasonably new thing in my life, but it has been transformative because I think people find out, like, did I miscommunicate? And you know how many times that's been the case? A lot. So if somebody says, oh, wait a minute, I didn't even know you could hear that, but now you said that, I get it. Let me correct what you should have heard. That alone has been transformative in figuring out how to avoid conflicts and avoid misconceptions. I mean, you know, Tom's heard me say this a million times. I'm in technology. You know where 99.99999% of technology fuck ups happen? Somebody didn't say that. someone never said, is this what you meant? Because in their mind, they're like, oh, I want a website that looks like this. In their mind, that means something very specific.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I think this is, I mean, I'm picking on me because it's my life, but this could be anything, whether you're building a house. How many people complained about their general contractors? Every one of them.
Every one of them.
Like every single one of them, like, I mean, and this keeps going, you can keep going down there. Anyway, so those are the two kind of things.
Wait, Lisa, can I, just to make it truly neurodivergent here, can I add to Matt's first part there? Because, when Matt and I are about the same age, when I was in school, we had a couple of kids that were on Ritalin, right? And it wasn't talked about. And like literally, I had my kid's pediatrician say to me, oh, she more than likely has ADHD. You do too. And I went, yeah, that tracks. I never had a formal diagnosis. And then I looked at the rest of my family and I went, that tracks. Generationally, yes, we've all had this. And maybe I'm rewording or honing in Matt's question here. What made some of us, I don't know, get by is the wrong word, but what made some of us
might not be the wrong word.
Yeah, but like, how did I escape drugs and at the same time, whatever modicum of success I have was able to deal with, and once again, I know there's a spectrum there, and some people are more ADHD than others. And if you put me in front of a scale and where they ask you, and we've done these, are they violent? Are they outbursting? I'd be like, no, I'm none of those things. And we actually had a previous guest go, oh, you're the daydreaming kind. And I went, oh shit, I didn't know we had flavors.
Yeah.
It was
there's ADHD and attentive, there's ADHD impulsive, there's ADHD impulsive and hyperactive.
Yeah.
So there are different flavors of it. And it used to be separated between ADHD and ADD, and now it's under an umbrella.
Yeah.
And I talk about that in training that, Matt, when we were talking about the difference between neurodivergent, neurodiverse, neurodiversity, I go through some of that, Tom, in that same session, because a lot of people ask these questions. So I will go through and unpack this. I saw you saw me shaking my head. I'm going to start with I'm going to back into when my diagnosis came about and how that happened and what you're asking, Tom. I'm going to start with, though, what
a
Matt
water slide parking.
So
his hot dog topic.
I'm going to start with
I'm going to start with hot dogs.
I am. I'm going to start with hot dogs. I was diagnosed ADHD in when I was 48. So I'm going to come back to that whole piece of it. But what you were saying, Tom, about Matt, when you got diagnosed, you said when you found out, it explained things, and your therapist was saying the thing about what I heard. So when I shared that some people feel that my greatest gift is that unknown, and then helping people find that. I'm going to read something to you. This is on my website. It's from a client, not the one that told me like the unknown unknowns is your zone of genius. This is from a different client. One of the things that he said, she takes the information others share and has a unique ability to help others grow. Lisa helped me during this time period discover things about myself that no one else had ever been able to discover about me over the past 20 years. So where that came from is he also said that my ability to truly listen to what others say is something I possess that is rare, but exceeds at truly hearing other people. And that is in part because I ask people, help me. What I heard you say is this. Let me share with you what I think you said, and then I want you to tell me if that makes sense. What I heard you say is this. Am I on track? And if not, what else do you want to tell me? What am I missing? What does that look like? And so I spent so many years of my life, and I did that. That was just something that I started to do on my own. And I'd done it for years, but I started to do it very intentionally and consistently over the last like 8 years, because as I started to become more comfortable with who I was, and this is even before me getting into burnout, but I was working with a lot of executives that were in the time of transforming their career, whether they were pivoting to a whole new career. But when I worked in corporate, I was gaslit a lot, and I was shut down by so many leaders, mostly men, but also some females. And I would ask these questions. They'd be like, why are you asking so many questions? And so it just shut me down more and more. And had I had anyone say to me, what I heard you say is this, is that correct? Instead of, that doesn't make sense, or I'm not going to listen to you, or we're just going to go down this hole instead, things would have been so much better for me and the people that I was working with. And a lot of that combativeness and a lot of me losing my sense of self, it would have been avoided because we would have been in the conversation together instead of people telling me that just like ignored what Lisa's saying because it didn't make sense to them, right? Because they weren't understanding my way of thinking. And so I use, Matt, what you're describing as a piece of every conversation that I have with people, because maybe not so great with my own kids and my husband, right? Like it's different when you're, but,
right.
And when it's funny because
do as I say, not as I do.
Just shut the fuck up and do what I said.
Truth be told, there's part of the reason, because when I do that with my family, they go, don't client me, or don't don't work me, mom, or don't school me. And I'm like, this is like truly how I learn things. But they hear me say it so much with clients that when they hear me say it to them, they're like, where are you going with this, mom? What are you trying to uncover? But what I've learned too is sometimes that's their defenses, not wanting to open up to me, even in my family. So I do still use it, and I started to use it more consistently in the last couple of years, because I realized that this is their uncomfortableness, not mine. I'm going to keep doing that to try to understand, because when I don't do it, they're like, you're judging me, or you just thought I said this, but it's not what I said. I'm like, well, yeah, when I ask for clarification, you tell me I'm like working you.
Right.
So, so I had to learn, right? So it's that double-edged sword. So I fully agree with what you're saying there, Matt. And I think it's a really important thing. It really does get people to understand and help to bridge those gaps and connect the dots. And what happens though is people need to be willing to listen to how you're describing it, even if it doesn't make sense to them, in order to move that in that direction collectively. So I'll pause there. Is there anything you want to ask me about that? And if not, I'll go into the whole diagnosis forma track.
I guess just a confirmation or not, but I find that a lot of neurodivergent people I know can process and internalize feedback pretty efficiently, like in terms of like, it's if they're motivated to change the outcome, right? Like I don't know about on a day-to-day, but like if you're in a business setting and you want to excel at that, getting feedback is something that I've seen people pretty religiously process well. So like having somebody say, this is what I heard, is that right? I think sets them up for more success in whatever they're doing. So I feel like that is helping people on the ND side kind of feel.
I would also say, at least if I heard that, I would be more receptive to that than I got it or something like that. You know, like it almost feels like you're allowing a person that you've said something or that has said something to you an ability to explain and redefine so you better understand it.
Right.
Because Matt and I have had this conversation and it's pretty much well known. If you watch some of the past shows, if I didn't like somebody, I'm like done. And Matt will always lean in with another question. And I'm like, I'm immediately writing the guy off. Fuck, this guy is a lunatic.
Yeah.
And Matt's like, well, you know, did you mean this or did you mean? And I'm like, no, this guy gets punched in the street if I see him, you know, and Matt's like, you know, did you mean? And it's more of a like, no, I got what he said. He was being an asshal.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, did you mean to be an asshole? Or, you know, and you know, one is very confrontational and one is like, I'm allowing you to clarify this for me, you know?
Yeah. And there's a couple pieces to this. It's growth mindset versus closed mindset. So if you have a fixed mindset, you're already writing that person off because you're thinking you know what they're really going to. A growth mindset allows for what Matt's describing, like asking for that. However, I want to flip this on its head for a minute, because part of the reason I stopped asking people if what I heard was what they said was because they started shutting me down, going, I get it. Nope, it's okay. It's okay. So as a neurodivergent individual, yes, it does work to our advantage, except when we've been pushed back against it so much and it creates PTSD or it creates trauma and you've been shut down. And then you stop speaking up and then you just freeze or get stuck. And I was there for a very long time where I stopped asking questions. I stopped being myself because of how the neurotypical society saw me as those questions being, I'm questioning that person. Instead, I'm asking for clarification.
I
was always asking for clarification and validation. Go ahead.
Can I don't want to sound like I'm pushing back on this, but I think this touches into some other topics. So just when you said like I got shut down and I had PTSD on that, right? Like I heard the same thing. I kind of briefly put myself in that position. What if I was in a room? Like as you're saying this, I'm like, okay, I'm in a room right now. I'm talking to somebody. I said, hey, here's what I heard. And they said, no, I got it. In my mind, my visceral reaction to that is, it seems like you answered pretty quick. The next parts of this are pretty important to me to make sure we get it right. Can I just ask you to be patient with this for one more minute? And this isn't a judgment on you handling it a different way where you just shut down. What I guess my question really is like, where's the line, or what's the sort of owned responsibility to just understand humans as humans, and like their nature is going to be impatient, gaslight. This is not like neurodivergent specific, right? This is just humans, right? We're taking the path of least resistance as many times as we can. You know what I'm saying? Like, so where does that personal sovereignty come into play?
Absolutely. So here's the thing. What I've learned through therapy in the last 6 years from burnout is, because of how I grew up, because of some of the trauma and things that happened, because of how often it was do as I say, not as I do, or what you're saying doesn't make sense, or, and it wasn't just one time. I tried what you were saying many times with that audience and with other audiences. And eventually you shut down. So what I will say is, if you are someone that has been surrounded by people, raised with people that were, even though they might push back a bit, were open to those conversations, then you would be able to continue to do that. Where the self piece comes in is, at the time that I shut down, my anxiety was so high, my sense of self was so low, I couldn't see the forest for the trees. So I couldn't recognize, wait a minute, I have an option to ask more questions. But that's where, when I was doing all that transformation work with those executives, there was one executive that grilled me so hard. And I went to the guy that ran the company and I'm like, this was a disaster. He's like, it couldn't have been that bad. I'm like, I am telling you, this guy, I had such a freeze reaction because he just triggered my 10 years in corporate of being like gaslit and toxic environments and all these things. And it was after that moment, and this was before my burnout, that I realized, who is this person to trample me and own me and feel that he is that much more powerful than me, that I can't stand in my value and worth. So it triggered me to then start to speak up and to push back in what you're describing, Matt. But it took that low to get there because there were so many years that I had these other things. And because of the past trauma, I'm not saying the PTSD was from that moment in time.
Sure.
I'm saying it was years and years and years of things happening that led to that shutdown. And it wasn't until I was able to start unpacking it that I could then do what you're describing. And so I'm saying that if you've had those trauma points, and for me, my CPTSD turned into fawning. So I became a people pleaser, and or I would freeze in some aspects. And I didn't understand all those complexities over the last 47 years before I started working with a therapist, until I started working with that therapist. So everybody isn't going to end up where I did in that. But one of the things I always tell people is gift yourself a therapist, because it's the best decision, but the longest thing I ever took to do, but the best thing I ever did. Because now I can have those conversations. I recognize the part I played and the part that they played.
Right.
And the other thing that therapist has really helped me understand is sometimes it was my judgment that led to that. But
no, 100%.
My path that led me there was not my fault as a child.
And Lisa, like, the reason I was niggling away at this is because I think, and the other topics that I think this touches that I vaguely referenced a few minutes ago is, personal opinion here, disclaimer, I think the polarity of the world right now is a byproduct of us not learning personal sovereignty rather than reaction to outside stimulus, right? Like, there is a way to disagree with somebody and still go out to dinner with them, right? Like, there is a way to gently say, hey, you know, Mr. Person who's putting me down and everything, listen, I get that you're probably a high functioning dude who's gotten a lot of people your whole life telling you this is okay. But right now, today, we need to slow the pace a little bit so that I could help you. Right. And that's not confrontational. That's just sort of being like, hey, man, gentle reminder, slow the fuck down for 5 minutes while we work this out. You got nowhere to be. We got nothing to do. Like, the world's not on fire. Like, let's make better decisions now. And I think more and more people are sort of like realizing that. Certainly, I mean, look, Tom and I live in a bubble on this show. Everyone that I would say almost everybody on this show lives in that world. Like, hey, let's ask better questions because we're looking for better answers, right? Like, and I think I could broadly bucket our guests under that category.
I would say the percentage of not is under 1% by now. We've definitely done over 200 shows. I can think of a few that I would be like, yeah, I don't need to talk to them again.
But my point is like, you know what? This show has definitely helped me as well, Lisa, is figure out what those boundaries of personal sovereignty are, right? Like, I now know when somebody is pressing up against something that I don't really want to condone, endorse, you know, like, and I have now found diplomatic ways out of those situations. And look, the nuclear option, you know, Tom and I have gotten feisty on this show a few times. The nuclear option is a nuclear option. You want to get my horns? Then keep going. Fuck around and find out.
Well, yeah, you know, but I also think that there's a difference between something that's a matter of opinion, and I know you're not saying this, and then something where it comes to like other people being allowed to exist. Right. No, exactly. You know, it's like, hey, man, chocolate sucks. OK, cool. You know, I would say no, but yeah, that's OK. Hey, this group of people doesn't deserve the same rights as everybody else. Not so much. Right. I'm like, Matt thinks I think everyone's a fascist, though.
Well, no, but you know what, Tom? Tom, you're talking about an extreme example.
Yeah,
of what
I know. No, I know. But perfect. I was framing that in like, we're not talking about this. We're talking about like hey, man, you might be a little wacky on that one.
And Lisa, you know? I love third rail topics because they illustrate points really well, right? Like, what if this crazy situation over here happened, right? But Tom's, this is right. It's an extreme example, but I think that comes from, like, look, the people you treat, Lisa, in the 80s when we all grew up, were literally the kids eating glue in the corner because, like, no one gave a shit about them. No one, like, they were cast to the side. No one gave them any attention.
Were called idiots. They were put into a special classroom. They were not expected to do anything. And I mean, it was everything from dyslexia to, you know, really bad ADHD.
I mean, we literally have a term called short bus because we couldn't even afford a real school bus.
Yeah, I mean...
We had the short bus too, right? I mean, so there's a couple of things here that I want to touch on.
Yeah.
You're right. Back in the day, it was you're either gifted, a behavioral problem, or have a learning disability.
Correct.
Or you're in the short bus class, right? That was it. That's all we did. So we didn't have a lot of the information that we have now. And I'm gonna come back around to the other thing you had asked about. But before I go there, the choosing are, well, you said something, both of you. So Matt, I think the big difference in what you were just describing is, so for many years, I felt like I had to work in corporate. I had to do these things, and they were never my people. They didn't understand me, and I didn't understand them. And so, doing a lot of that more virtual work and having everyone else come into my virtual world. I was working virtually back when I was using AIM, the little AIM messenger guy from AOL, and Skype. Okay, AIM and Skype. That dates me, right? I was doing virtual work back then.
What was your ICQ handle,
most people
Lisa?
weren't, but
I remember mine, and I'm embarrassed by it.
I don't remember mine, but I remember the little guy. So maybe it was Laserbeam, because my last name was Lazar, my nickname was Laser. But that's how long I've been doing this virtual work. I'm like, oh, people have now come in, and even that work, like I would get beat down if a dog was in the background or somebody was talking because I'm supposed to be working. I'm like, but you're in my home, and now guess what? Everyone's like, we're in the home. So then we do those virtual backgrounds that impact me, right? So there's so many things that have shifted and changed. But the bigger message here is we get to choose who our people are. We get to choose where we put our energy and where we put our time. And so I will be respectful to everyone and ask those questions. But if someone pushes back and continues to push back in a way that I don't feel they're one of my people and they're not willing to meet me where I am or me meet them where they are, then I say thank you, but not. And when it comes to like me working with leaders, the majority of the leaders that I ended up working with and helped them find their path forward to the next level C-suite or to become a better leader because they started to listen versus think they knew everything or react or respond. They're the same people that told me I didn't know what I was talking about, that were pushing me back, telling me to stop, telling me I get it when they didn't get it. They were the same profiles. What's changed, they didn't change. I stopped letting them step all over me. But it was because of the therapy I went through and recognizing that I had a trauma response to what they were saying. And so instead of using the things that I know work, help me understand what you're asking me to do. That's not making sense to me. Here's what I heard you say. I stopped using those phrases. I stopped stopping them and redirecting them because they were so overpowering in their way of doing things and made me feel so stupid that I just stopped. But now I come to things in a place where I know what I know. I know where I got it. I know what my value and worth is, and I know what I won't stand for anymore. And that is such a freeing place to be. And that helps me now work with anybody that's willing to go there and to open up those doors. But if I talk with a potential client and I get that gut feeling that they are not right, I go with my gut, because what I've learned is that so many years my gut was right and people told me my gut was wrong. And I made ill-informed decisions based on what other people told me was correct. And so I don't do that anymore because of like the lessons I've learned and what I've done. But we do all have choices. And I think that's what this comes down to. And we get to surround ourselves or say yes or no to what's not working. And for so many years as being that people pleaser, I felt like I had to fix everyone and I had to do that because as young as 5 years old, I was going into my brother's room and I was making sure that he was calm enough to come out and not throw a fit because of a sensory meltdown, which we didn't even know what it meant back then, you know? And so, you know, he was one that would throw himself into our back glass door. And now that I think about it, I'm like, wow, he was trying to regulate, but we didn't know that. He's highly intelligent, like, you know, and so I've never had that conversation with him, but I know for a fact, looking back, knowing what I know now.
Yeah, sure.
I have one child diagnosed autistic, one diagnosed ADHD, both with other coexisting diagnoses. But that's it. Like, right, we learn and we grow. And I want to touch on that ADHD thing that you all talked about. Are you okay if I?
Yeah.
Look, it's your show. Keep going.
Yeah, keep going, man. This is great.
Right. So the diagnosis at 40, right? I got diagnosed 48 with ADHD. I was diagnosed with anxiety in my 20s, but no one really explained to me what that meant. And I've always had anxiety. And I think back
and you were coming off a professional athlete who's not anxious. Yeah. Yeah. You had all these other things going on. What?
Some people ask me, how was I an elite level athlete being with anxiety? I was like, well, when I was in the gym, I was in my zone. Like I was my best me in that gym. And so I unknowingly, I was doing everything I needed to stay grounded and sensory and my body regulated, because I was flipping and twisting and doing tricks and practicing. And everything was in this structured yet chaotic, controlled or uncontrolled environment all at the same time. So it was working with my brain, right? Going like that. So when I got diagnosed, we didn't talk about any pharma track at all. Not from my therapist that diagnosed me, or when I changed primaries. And within the first 30 minutes, she's like, has anybody talked to you about ADD, ADHD? And I was like, yep, we went down that. And so what happened for me was, I didn't think I would have cared. Like I always said, I didn't want to get diagnosed. My older son would say to me for several years, Mom, if you're not ADHD, I don't know who is, because you're my younger brother is a copy of how you act and react sometimes. And I was like, yeah, whatever. It doesn't bother me. I don't care. And yet when I got that diagnosis, it gave me another level of empowerment and confidence that I never thought it was going to give me. And I honestly couldn't have cared if I got diagnosed, but now I look back and think it was a great thing, because now I make sense to me. How I do things makes sense. Some of my executive functioning struggles make so much more sense. How I can, where I get stuck, when I would be exhausted, like all these parts of my life that never made sense to me or to others. It just all, like, I just have this, I'm going to call it a beautiful puzzle picture, fully crafted, that's weird and bizarre to some people, but completely makes sense to me now. And so I learned so many tools over the years of how to navigate a world that wasn't built for me. And now I know how to use those tools, not just to guide myself forward without going back into burnout, but also how to help others navigate that journey too. And so, Tom, to your question about how did some people escape drugs and how did some people deal with it? The other thing is, I've been taking tons of notes.
I've been watching you. I was going to comment.
Yeah, we were watching you. Yeah.
I was like, man, this is how you get around ADHD. I should take more notes.
But here's the thing. In corporate, that was another thing. Stop taking notes. You're not listening. In reality, when I'm not taking notes, I'm not. Yeah, so that was another thing I stopped doing. And then people would go, well, how come you don't remember what I asked you to do? Because I didn't take notes, And so it's all these little things that people didn't understand. I thought I was, or I'm typing and someone's like, you're not listening to me. I'm like, do you realize I'm taking notes so that I can listen? And like, I had one person want to almost hang up on me. I hear you typing over there. If you want to talk to me, you can talk to me when you're focused. I'm like,
yeah,
you know that I take notes, because every other meeting we've had, I've taken notes.
I've given you no reason to not believe me here.
Yes. So those are the things. So learning those tools that work for you. And so, Tom, like back to that, that escape, and that's how I don't interrupt, because I also would get yelled at for stop interrupting me. I'm like, and so now I'll say, well, I didn't write a note there, so I'm going to interject because I'm going to forget it. So I'm not being disrespectful, but now I'm going to remember to get my pen out. That's why I said at the beginning, let me get my paper. So escaping, right? I mean, I know what works for me, and I own it now, and I share with others. So they're like, oh, I didn't think about that, or that's a good idea. Like, Matt, you just said, oh, I should take notes. That's how you get around it.
Lisa, so when I was in grad school, somebody gave me a coloring book and a set of colored pencils. And somebody goes, how the fuck are you coloring? And then the teacher goes, he's got an A. He can do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
Well, when I'm coloring, when my hand's moving and I'm coloring, I'm listening better.
Right.
When you're asking me to look, it's just like the whole thing with autism. But before I go there, so how you escape that and deal with it is you might have gained tools and learned how to navigate that world, and or your complexity of that neuro difference may not be as extreme as someone else's. So for me, I didn't realize how extreme some of my executive functioning struggles were until I got certified as an executive functioning coach. And I didn't do it because I wanted to coach people. I did it because I got tired of the school systems telling me that executive functioning didn't thread through language differences, specific language disorders, and ADHD, and some other things. And so I wanted to be known as the expert that could come in and say, I get what you're saying, but I also see it from this perspective, and I follow this person. And so when I'm gaining insights, it's to be able to help me inform people and understand them better and them understand me. And so you can escape those drugs and deal with it when you are self-aware enough to become informed and trust yourself to move through it. However, at the same time, there are some people that may need that medicine. So my younger son, we went to the psychiatrist and they immediately put him on ADHD meds. A year and a half later, the day before the world shut down, so COVID, my older son had said something is going on, and he would literally be talking and then do this. And we're like, Xander, and we look at him again, and my older son Joseph said, Mom, there's something going on. That's not him just zoning out with the ADHD. There's something else going on. Fast forward, we scheduled an appointment with a neurologist. Come to find out, he had absence seizures. So literally, it's like what you call not grand mal, but the other one.
Sometimes they call it stargazing, don't they?
Mal. Or petite mal. So So it's called absence seizures. So literally, it's like a light switch, off and on. So then, and in that meeting, the neurologist said, get him off the ADHD meds and put him on anxiety medicine, because the anxiety medicine is triggering these seizures. The anxiety is not only triggering the seizures, but the ADHD cannot get placed under control to even give him tools until his anxiety is dealt with. And we had just been in like a neuro session with somebody through Chad who said the same thing, but this psychiatrist didn't even talk about putting him on anxiety medicine. They wanted him on ADHD. So he has never gone back on ADHD meds, but he's now off of the anxiety. We've talked about, as he grows, like complexities, maybe going back on a low dosage. And I've been on and off anxiety meds for years because they help with my brain regulation, but at a small dose. But he was on seizure medication for many years, and now, thank goodness, he's been off of them for years. He's outgrown those seizures, which you can outgrow the petite mal ones, but he's still, if the seizures ever come back, the first thing we would do is put him back on the anxiety meds, because the anxiety can trigger that dysfunction. And so there's reasons to be on medicines and there's reasons not to. The school that my younger son is at now, where I'm also their neurodiversity consultant, it's emotional, social, then academic. And so he has learned so many skills in mindfulness and meditation that last year he asked to come off of his anxiety medication, and he hasn't gone back on it because he learned those tools. So every person is different, but when people tell me that they immediately jump to that, my older son never was on medication, and people kept telling me that he should be on it. Now, he had tons of interventions, speech, applied behavioral, trauma-informed applied behavioral therapy. I say trauma-informed because not all of them were trauma-informed. Speech and language, all sorts of different interventions, but every individual is different. And with one of those interventions, I'm going to shift over to the autism thing. I was talking about, like, when I write, I listen better. So the watching, one of the old school things, which I still see some doing, is you're going to teach an autistic child how to look you in the eye. And I'm not even saying this is just about autistic anymore. You're going to ask a nervous person, an anxious person, to look you in the eye while you're telling them something, as their nervous system goes like this, right? It just gets more and more dysregulated. And so we eventually took that off of my older son's goal area, because I kept seeing every time he was asked to look, he would just have a sensory meltdown. So we were working with the therapist, the ABA therapist, and I said to Franco, that was his name, and I said, I can't understand why we need to keep asking him to look at you in the eye when every time he does it, it seems to dysregulate him. So we took it off the table. when we did that, we started to realize no matter where he was looking, if we said, we need you to listen to us, this is what I need you to do next, and then you can get this after you do that. We started to slowly see less and less dysregulation when we didn't ask him. But funny enough, when he was learning how to drive, we're in the car a couple of years ago, and he starts looking at me when he's talking, and I was like, Joseph, eyes on the road, eyes on the road. And he started laughing, and I was like, what's so funny? He said, Mom, I remember when one of my goals was to look at someone in the eye when I was talking to them. And now I'm trying to drive, and you're telling me to talk to you, but I have to keep my eyes on the road. So now you're telling me to do the exact opposite of what they were telling me needed to happen. And that is because it was a social norm.
Yeah.
If you don't look at someone in the eye, you're not being respectful. If you don't shake someone's hand in a certain way, you're not being respectful. If you don't do this, then you're not being respectful. But those were all societal expectations of what normal is.
Right. And that's funny because, not haha, I guess, but it's interesting, funny that he's like, I had this lesson that I almost memorized, not necessarily learned. I just incorporated this sort of surface thing that says, okay, if A, then B, and now we're in C, and the same rules don't really apply. You know what I mean? And it's just an interesting interpretation of that.
But I love that that's a social norm because, or a social norm conversation, not that it's a social norm, solely because when I'm listening to somebody, I'm normally looking off in the distance. I'm turning my ear towards their mouth.
Right.
And it's not like I'm leaning in, and my wife's like, you didn't look that guy in the eye. I'm like, I can't physically, show you more that I'm paying attention than physically putting my ear closer to you.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't have a problem with eye contact.
Yeah.
Not you and not hear a word you say, to be honest. And
honestly, God,
like
my wife's biggest issue with me. I'm looking right at her. She's like, what did I say?
I have no idea.
I don't know. What are we having for dinner? Is that what that was?
Right. And I don't know what that is. I'd love to have a behavioral psychologist explain this to me, but I'm the exact same way where I'm like, I hear more of what's going when I'm not focused on that thing than if I am focused on it.
Yeah. So I can tell you for my oldest, from the behavioral psychologist that we worked with, also one of the people I hadn't said, we spent thousands and thousands of dollars on my kid. Back then, nothing was.
Yeah, neurodivergence is not cheap. That's for sure.
No.
Yeah.
No, not in general. And then back then it wasn't covered. Almost nothing was covered under insurance.
Yeah.
But our behavioral psychologist, what we talked about is that for my oldest, and for many people that struggle with multitasking or doing multi-step things, and that could be just how someone's brain's wired, and that's the only thing that they struggle with. But if you're asking me to look and listen, you're asking me to do two intentional sensory things at the same time. And if my brain can only process one of those things at any given time, I can either look at you or I can listen to you, but I can't look at you and listen.
Right.
If you want me to watch something, then I can look at it. But if you want me to watch it and listen, I may not be able to. And so someone that's just very visual needs to see it to understand it. Somebody that's auditory needs to hear it. Somebody that's auditory visual needs to do both. Someone that's multimodal might need to be like, I'm sitting there bouncing on my chair while I'm talking, playing with my pen, because I have to be doing something. I have to be doing something to really listen. I have to write it down, not only to listen, but to not interrupt. So it's, you learn these tools and aspects that work for you, and then you get to educate others that don't understand how you're doing that, the benefit of you doing that for not just yourself, but their benefit.
Right.
If you want me to listen, you're going to be okay with me doing this.
Yeah. And I think that that's the most interesting part, because now when people learn, at least what I've seen is when people learn this about themselves and they're like, hey, whether it's to your wife, your friend, your husband, boy, whatever, I learned this thing about myself. Check this out. Most of the time they're also like, oh, that does make a lot of sense now. Right. And and it like expands everybody's sort of togetherness, if you will, because now you're like, oh, now we have a new way of interacting. But like the funny part is about that is like I find them to be less myopically about neurodivergence, and just like, if we were just better human beings, we'd all be doing this like all the time. Like it wouldn't have to be just neurodivergence or not. Like these are just good practices in general, right? Like you don't necessarily need, we know multitasking is biologically impossible, right? We are a sequential being. Our brain does not physically, cannot do it. We might be able to phase shift really fast, but we can't actually multitask, right? So why do we always try? Like that's always perplexed me for years, right? Yeah. So if I can't watch a TV show that you're asking me to watch and talk to you at the same time, that's not a bad thing.
That's not a bad thing. Yeah.
That's like, no, let me just fucking watch the show, man. Like I just, we don't need to do both. But anyway,
well, better humans, right? You said better humans. That's what this is all about. And when I think about, I love what you just said, because when we think about accommodations and we think about some of the things, like if I go back to understanding neurotypes or leading and engaging across neurotypes, some of the things that I talk about in those training sessions is something that everybody can benefit from. And when I have that conversation with organizations or parents or just people in general, they're like, oh yeah, that would help our entire team. And so some of these things, if we just chose to put them in place, they don't just help the person that needs it, they help the people that don't even realize it would help them.
Sure.
And then everyone benefits, productivity goes up, engagement goes up, retention goes up, and productivity leads to higher return on investment.
Sure.
In finances, right? Less and more capacity and more energy. But we like look at this thing in this myopic way instead of looking at it in the nonlinear way. And those intersectionalities are what really and I think it's becoming more apparent now that it's necessary, that human element, because with AI is great in some aspects, but there are certain things that AI can't do, and that's feel and learn and do. And I use Gemini for most of my stuff because that's what I've used. And now I have and I like other platforms to do certain things, but one of the things that Gemini, I felt like it was a little more personal for me for many times, but I've caught it a few times saying to me, well, I can't give you that perspective because I don't feel something like it. And I was like, whoa, where'd that come from?
Right.
So it's almost like it's recognizing itself. When I ask for a feeling about something, it'll say, well, I don't have experience with that, so I can't share that with you. And that's the truth, is there are certain things that are actually going to bring new opportunities for people like myself and the way that you all are talking about things to the surface that is needed more now than ever. Because if you can't connect the dots in a zigzag, nonlinear way, non sequitur, to piece together all the parts of what AI is trying to help us do, the middle falls apart. And the things we're trying to get done are never going to be accomplished. You're not going to sustain them. They're not going to be accessible to all people. And that's just the reality. And years ago, I would say those things and people would be like, shut up, that's not going to happen. Go away, or you're wrong. You know what you're talking about. And guess what? Some of those companies and some of those departments of things that I said weren't going to work, I left the company years before, maybe because of, we don't want to go down the path we're going down. And those projects never lifted off the ground to execution because I wasn't there to bring them through. And I'm not saying that to be like cocky. And I can't believe I just said it out of my mouth, but it's true. There's two different companies that I was looking to implement things. One of them, it just never got implemented. The other one, they hired two people to do the job I was doing, and they still didn't get those things implemented.
So Lisa, I'm laughing over here because 68 minutes went by before we said AI, which is probably the longest.
It's a world record.
Any of our shows have ever gone without
a world
saying
record.
AI.
Yeah.
I'm like, she finally said it. Oh, we haven't said it this whole time.
We haven't said it at all. Yeah. That's hilarious.
Well, AI doesn't lead the charge, just like a resume shouldn't lead the charge, just like a diagnosis shouldn't lead the charge.
Sure.
Yeah.
They are pull-throughs, they follow you, they help you, but they are not the guiding light.
Yeah. Lisa, listen, I could literally talk to you about this all day.
Great.
But
Great.
Let's I want to hear, first of all, thank you for lending a perspective on this. I mean, I feel like despite Tom and I's self and otherwise diagnoses of our own, it's always helpful to understand this is a gradient topic in my mind, right? Like there's so much nuance to this, and I feel like getting perspectives on this is always super helpful for me personally. So thank you for that. But more importantly, our audience is going to stop listening if we don't shut up here soon. So we're going to
Speaking of attention spans,
let's move to what's the commercial for
the
Lisa?
commercial.
Where do we want to send people? Tell about, you got something coming up, something you want to plug? Let's throw it all out there. Socials, you name it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I shared, a bit about the different things that I do throughout the conversation here. So, just to reiterate, transforming stuck into success for students, athletes, individuals. You can find out more about me and how I leverage my clarity, confidence, and courage journey map by going to my website, which is journey2bloom.com. My email address is lisa@ probably guess
Journey
it.
to Bloom, yeah.
Journey2bloom.com. Yep. And then you can find me on my socials. My Insta is @journey2bloom. And then you can find me under my name under LinkedIn and Facebook. The one thing that I would plug is back there, you can see it says Confident You, the Raw Conversations. I had the opportunity to co-author a chapter in this book that was curated by Julie DeLuca Collins. My chapter is chapter 12. It's called Unbecoming to Become, Finding Clarity in the Chaos. It weaves together many facets of the things that we just talked about here today, helps people understand. But more importantly, I hope that it helps others understand that they too can be true to themselves and be free to be themselves if they allow themselves to go through that journey. And everything I do is through that neurodivergent lens. So I love to talk to anybody that's willing to learn more about this, hear more about it. Thank you so much for your time today. This conversation was so much fun. I looked up and was like, "Oh my gosh, we've been on for an hour."
It goes so quick when you're in flow. Yeah.
It's funny. People are like, "How the hell do you talk for an hour?" I'm like, I have to shut it down. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, we've had to rein some people in, and it's like, all right, we're at an hour and 25 now, and
yeah.
we gotta cut it.
Yeah. So, so again, thank you for coming. This was super cool.
Yeah, such a great convo.
Yeah, man, I can't wait to send people your way. And more importantly, I can't wait to keep seeing you over at the Octopus. I think this has been a really fun group to help watch move, and the human score has been super fascinating. So I'm glad you're part of all of that as well. All right, guys.
Me as well. So thank you for me.
Yeah, anytime. So, all right, guys, listen, have a great weekend and take care.
Be subversive, irreverent.
Health is wealth, but you knew that.
Everybody knows that.
But so is following us on social media at Irreverent Health. And check out our website for more exclusive content at irreverenthealth.com.
Oh, I like this.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Irreverent Health.